On to the media, and what better place to start than the BBC? And I want to highlight here reporting to do with Israel and Gaza. Let's bring it on screen, and we're going to do this quite quickly, but I'm encouraging people to really look and watch and think about the BBC and how it reports. The first thing at the top we've been mentioning for a while is the relative positions of things. So Israel and the Gaza war, number 2 now. They've moved up to top billing. Cost of living, and then we're at the war in Ukraine. So the war in Ukraine dropping to the background. But as I looked at the BBC page, climate was given a mention, of course, what I was interested in was this one, BBC Verify attacks. BBC verifies attacks in areas of safety in South Gaza. And the BBC analysed 4 strikes. Now, I went to look at this because I was particularly interested to see what they did. This is another part of the main part of the BBC webpage, and I couldn't help but notice how they do it. So we've got a picture of a huge bomb crater, but there's nothing about deaths in the headline. It's strike leaves massive crater, whereas the small text says, well, at least 50 people died. So the BBC manipulating people who are looking at its material. But here's the BBC Verify segment, and I'm going to say, because I've only got a short time to do this, encourage people to go and read it for yourself, because it's very important that we know exactly what the BBC said. But the point of what the BBC was doing, as you can read if you freeze the screen, is that they were checking what had happened in cases where there'd been Israeli bombings and people had died, because they felt that there were cases where people had moved to safe areas on the instructions of the Israeli, but subsequently those areas were bombed and people died. These are the 4 areas and 4 circumstances that the BBC decided to look at. And if you go into each of these, you'll find that the BBC team clearly have concerns that people were advised, often through social media, although we know that at one stage the Israelis had shut down social media, people were advised to move south in Gaza or move from one area to another area. They had just done so when there was an attack, when bombs fell in those new areas, and that resulted in casualties. Now, basically, this is just one of them, Khan Yunis, on the 10th of October, and Israeli fighter jets struck here. But the point that the BBC makes, and I'll do it quickly by showing you this image, is that on the left-hand picture, with a map of city areas, there's an arrow showing the direction that people were invited to move to safety, taking them to a more central position. And no sooner had they done so than there was a massive strike which caused huge casualties, as we can see in the right-hand figure. And the BBC went through the remaining 3 examples with similar sorts of analysis. And I think it's very important we recognise that the BBC is starting to do this. Here is the IDF response. And if we just highlight it a bit, it said that it cannot provide any further information regarding these specific locations. It had called on civilians in Gaza to move south for their safety, but will continue striking terrorist targets in all parts of Gaza. It added, in accordance with international law, the IDF takes precautionary measures in order to avoid damage to the civilian population. These measures include warnings before strikes in cases where it's possible to do so. So that was the response from the Israelis. Let's just have a look at this little film clip here where there's comment about bombing by one of the IDF spokespeople.
We were focused again on our target, a senior commander, Wolf, and we'll be updating you with more data as the hour moves ahead.
But even if that Hamas commander was there amidst all those Palestinian refugees who are in that Jabalia refugee camp, Israel still went ahead and dropped a bomb there, attempting to kill this Hamas this Hamas commander, knowing that a lot of innocent civilians, men, women, and children, presumably would be killed? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's not what you're hearing, Wolf. We're focused on this commander, again, who you'll get more data who this man was, killed many, many Israelis. We're doing everything we can. It's a very complicated battle space. There could be infrastructure there. There could be tunnels there. We're still looking into it, and we'll give you more data as the hour moves ahead.
But you know that there are a lot of refugees, a lot of innocent civilians, men, women, and children in that refugee camp as well, right?
This is the tragedy of war, Wolf. I mean, as you know, we've been saying for days, move south. Civilians that are not involved with Hamas, please move south. About the civilians there, we're doing everything we can to minimize. I'll say it again. Sadly, they are hiding themselves within civilian population.
So there we are. The advice is please move south, but even the BBC has had to admit that when people have done that previously, they've then been attacked and bombed. Alex, let's welcome you to